Have you been boring yourself with uninteresting podcasts made by monotone and overly serious people? Are you tired of hearing the same stuff every day on NPR? Then please consider helping us on our mission of making Thrive Loud the #1 business podcast. Because, well, let's be honest, we're #1.
Today on Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond.
Began to see how the younger people were not getting the attention they needed because the senior people were too busy. And I started next generation programs for them in about 1997.
You don't need to play it safe.
This was spectacular.
And I'm going to be really honest, so I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, that's what we want.
And there will be bumps in the road. There will be twists and turns.
You needed moxie on the floor and volume.
It's the results and the connections and the improvement and the impact we have on other people's life. And that's when life becomes exciting.
Who do you turn to personally to get back on the thriving track?
I was really interested in how the world works.
Thanks for the great introduction.
It was really very simple. I just read part of your bio. Be brief, be bright, be gone.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today on Thrive Loud, we have the foremost workplace multi-generational expert speaking with a cross-generational voice. She brings an unusual combination of marketing, conflict resolution and organizational effectiveness, expertise, and a great track record to help organizations solve the urgent, nuanced, and sensitive intergenerational challenges that can hinder productivity, client relationships, effective multi-generational teamwork, and business development results. Woo, that's a mouthful. She is the author of the provocative You Can't Google It, the compelling case for cross-generational conversation at work. Thrive Loud fans, Phyllis Weiss Haserot. Phyllis, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am excellent. I had the great opportunity to meet Phyllis twice. I met her first at a book signing in New York City, and then I got to meet her a second time when she got to hear me speak, which is pretty cool, and we continued to chat more. Right. She has one energetic story, but also a phenomenal perspective. And as I mentioned in the opening, this understanding about understanding the generations is a very huge thing that I am totally on board with, because this is one of the biggest challenges that every organization seems to have these days because of the different ways we work. So Phyllis, if you could, I want to go through some of the biggest challenges you see today and how this became your specific area of expertise. Is that a good way to kick things off here?
That's fine. Do you want me to tell you some of the challenges? I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges is that not enough decision makers are feeling it's urgent enough, to develop the resources that they need. And I actually got into this in 2004 as my primary focus. I had been for a long time a business development and marketing consultant and facilitator and writer, speaker, all those things that I still do, but focusing on marketing and business development for professional service firms, a lot of law and accounting and others. And I began to see how the younger people were not getting the attention they needed because the senior people were too busy. And I started next generation programs for them in about 1997. And that was catching on. And then we had the recession of 2001. And it went from, we've got to do everything we can to retain these people to, well, they're lucky they have jobs and we don't have to do those things anymore. So in about 2004, the economy got good again. And millennials were just entering the workplace. So I'm giving a little context here. You can stop me because I'll have a lot to say about that. But
Well, I'll put a pin on this right now because this is something that I found really interesting. And by the way, I totally get it. Understand when the economy is good and people have time to divest and look into this, they have the resources behind it. And when it's not, they use the attitude that you just described. But I want to rewind a little bit.
Sure.
When I entered the workforce in the very early 90s, and at that particular point, the recognition of differences in what generation started work was never, I guess, maybe even acknowledged. It was more like we knew we had to put in our time. We knew we had to go through certain things. We may have been told certain things. And for some reason, we were okay with this. What has happened over, let's call it the next 10, 20 years that has changed dramatically the relationship and understanding of people in the workforce and recognizing that these multi-generational mindsets and issues are causing problems in the workplace that, by the way, they may have existed long ago, but for whatever reason, it feels amplified today?
Well, it's a matter of the younger people being more vocal about what they don't like or how they want things to go. Because the baby boomers, when they came in, sort of, despite the fact they were going to change the world, thought they would do it from the inside. So they accepted how the traditionalists had set up structures and policies. And Gen X, especially the older half, had come in after or during another big recession, not as bad as 2008 and such, but they had to be quieter, and they were lucky to have jobs, and a lot of them were overqualified for what they were doing. But then it was optimistic times when the Millennials, then first called Gen Y, and they still are around the world, but the U.S. uses Millennials. And things were more optimistic. They had been educated to speak up from their parents, from their teachers, coaches, mentors, all of that, which they had a lot of attention. And they felt that they could do that and, give their opinions, speak their voice, and wanted to be heard. And so then there were 4 generations, more differences. And, then of course we had the crash boom of the Great Recession in 2008. So you had people who were, again, jobs were harder to get. But you also had quickly moving technology and changes in skills, demographic shifts to a much more diverse population than ever, and especially Gen Z now, and a lot, the millennials, shades and layers of personal identity, whether it was gender, political, ethnic, or sexual identity, of people who was just speaking up. And, society was changing to pay attention to this. And then we had this eruption of divisiveness in the last few years that is, before was kept more beneath the surface. So we have all these things going on. We're experiencing treacherous times. There are terrible anxieties, especially from the young people, and they're not going to go away soon. We got to address them together, but there's too much retreating into tribes, which is the opposite of seeking answers.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in because now I want to understand a little bit of the how. I totally get the why you are doing what you're doing. The biggest challenge, to your point, as mentioned in the title of your book, is the cross-generational conversation at work. Tell me, Phyllis, what are some of the things that you do to help start the conversations at work to address these issues so that all of these sensitivities, for lack of a better word, can be addressed? Tell me how you go about doing that with your expertise and your skill set.
Right. Well, one of the things that's really very important is creating a non-threatening atmosphere. And people have lost the art of conversation or never got one in the first place.
So
electronic devices can provide escape. and they don't want to risk reaching out beyond their comfort zone. So what I do with my cross-generational conversation day workshops, and so there are a number of things that I do, but with those kind of things, we divide people into groups of up to a dozen people. Can be less, definitely can be less. You can't have a conversation with 40 people, but you can have several of those going on in one organization or in one event. And give them some background. They need to have the perspective and start to understand what made the different generations think, act, and perceive the way they do. Perspective is a hard thing to learn without having conversations. So you want to have that and ask questions. The curiosity, which is one of the 10 essential skills and traits that I discuss in the book, is one of them, curiosity. And you cannot be a good business developer or a good networker if you're not curious about other people. So we have to start asking questions. And we give them questions that are issues that are relevant to the people in the group, and get them starting to all talk. Everybody's got to talk. And I have found what delights me is that people are usually ready to jump in. And they find that they've gotten something out of that when everybody is listening to them, and they don't feel like their job is at stake, what other things are, so they need to be facilitated for, some of those things. But you encourage people to start talking to people and find out what they're about and why they believe and do what they do. And one of the things that management has to do is let them set aside time for conversations. So some of the key steps to understanding each generation is, first of all, you have to want to and put the focus on the other person. You need to set aside time for conversation, ask questions, don't censor what you hear, listen in, think about what you hear. It's time well spent. Mm-hmm. And then learn to develop empathy and trust, which were a couple of the other of those skills. And then, sort of take the role of historian, try to learn and understand the perspective that I mentioned, and discuss how you can help each other reach individual as well as organizational goals. What is the common ground? How can we do this together?
We know you're loving this amazing interview on Thrive Loud and how Lou is connecting with our guest. If you want to learn the skills Lou speaks about to audiences all over the world, head on over to loudiamond.net and order a copy of Lou's best-selling book, Master the Art of Connecting. Once you master how to connect, you'll thrive loud too. Okay, back to the show.
That's great. And by the way, for the Thrive Loud listeners, I mentioned earlier, I got to see Phyllis in the audience when I was speaking. When I specifically spoke about the power of empathy, she was like, her head was nodding up and down. It was really fun to watch her yes, that's what we all need to do. So, and this is a good point, because you actually said something really important. It's not so much about those workshops and setting the time so that everybody comes together. What I liked what you said is that the leaderships of these organizations need to set up the time. And this is not just in that workshop, but on an ongoing basis. So that they can continue taking what they learned and working together and share that throughout the organization. I was going to then spin this into, obviously, which is one of my favorite book titles, because when you shared with me what your book title was the first time we met, I remember nodding my head. I go, okay, that's just simply brilliant.
Everybody loves it.
You can't Google it. Okay. Tell everyone why you picked this title and give a kind of quick summation as to what the book specifically is focusing about and why you can't Google it.
All right. Well, it is focused, as you can tell from the subtitle, of The Compelling Case for Cross-Generational Conversation at Work. So I was working on this for a while, and I reorganized it, and that's the final result, around these 10 essential skills and traits that are, I believe, essential for success at work. So let's see, perspective, trust and empathy, relevance, confidence, conversation, curiosity, reciprocity, that has to do with networking and other things, personalization or high touch, and inspiration, and transition fluidity, which is about succession planning and knowledge transfer. And each of these are looked at through the lens of each of the generations, of 5 generations that we have now, because Gen Z is beginning to enter the workplace.
Right.
So that's one more that's very different than the millennials. So all those companies and organizations that changed over everything because they thought millennials were demanding certain things, you're going to find that they're really dealing with still another generation that is much different from them. And I interviewed 2 or 3 members of multi-generational teams in a lot of industries for the book.
I'm actually going to jump into exactly what you just started talking about, because I have 2 children that fall into the Gen Z and this new generation. And I heard something interesting from them and from their peers, and that they are actually fighting a little bit of an uphill and generational battle because of many of the generalizations of the generation, the millennials that preceded them. And they're, in fact, trying to actually distinguish themselves a little bit from the millennials. Can you talk a little bit about that and the dichotomy between those 2, because those are the 2 newest generations in the workforce?
Sure. And the millennials are battling all this hype and a lot of misunderstandings, misinterpretations, or just, garbage that is, have been manufactured about what they are or they aren't. And one thing is interesting. Well, let me, I'll answer your question, and it's sort of a tangent of that. But millennials are much more optimistic, or started out that way because things were good before the Great Recession. The Gen Z, their formative influences were about that, about cybersecurity, about terrorism, a real insecurity about how well they're going to be able to do financially, really worried about not only jobs, but wanting to make a lot of money. And so they're much more interested in working for larger organizations than the millennials were, but they're also more entrepreneurial. And they, some of them started when they were in not only high school, but before that, developing apps that solved problems for things that they needed on a day-to-day basis. They weren't thinking about being the next Mark Zuckerberg. Excuse me. It was that they were problem solvers, and they are problem solvers. They also are not as much group thinkers as the millennials are. Millennials, if something comes up and they want to know it, they would throw it out to all of the people that they know to get answers back. The Gen Zers tend to be more independent-minded, really more like Gen X, who are their parents, so that's not so unusual. They like working independently, more autonomous. They like offices with walls. They're not, all wanting to be in these big open spaces. So, those are some of the things.
That's
they
right.
want things to be different. They want feedback. They want mentors. They want the attention of everything that they feel can further their careers.
Phyllis, I love asking all the guests that come on Thrive Loud this question. I'm very curious to see where this goes. When you personally have trouble thriving, whether it's in the workplace, when you're putting together the book, and you want to get back on the thriving track, who or what person or what practice do you seek to do so?
The thriving track, you're meaning that you can get your focus back on the project you're working on?
Sure. Or just, we all have off days, and sometimes we need to do an activity to get us back on it. So what would that be for you personally?
Oh, well, if it's something that I think I can get good advice from, I have wonderful networks, wonderful friends, and so I will ask that, listen, and consider. I can't stand being in a funk for very long, so I will do things that make me happy. That's being out with people. I might put on some jazz, dance around the living room. I know, literally, and do things that take my mind off what is bothering me or what seems to be a stuck point for the time being. I'm a creative, and I know that very often the best ideas come when I'm not trying to think about something.
Yep, I totally get it. Phyllis, what are some of the big goals that you have for the book, for You Can't Google It, and even for your business and your area of expertise, some things that you're looking forward to doing down the road to really help them take it to the next level? You seem like that person that's always looking to get the most out of everything you do.
Well, yeah, I have too many ideas, which is the problem of why some of them are not getting done fast enough. But I would like to get the book into a lot of hands, of course, not only just selling books, but I think that it's really very, very important information in there. And really unfortunately, as a marketer, not a very narrow audience, because it's easier to do your marketing focused on a very narrow segment. But this is really, really important for the younger generations. As I said, they've either lost or never had the art of conversation. There's a lot of anxiety along all of the generations. The young people are also feeling ageism. We hear a lot about it from the older end. But younger people are hearing, well, why should we give you some responsibility? What do you know? What experience do you have? And so they're fighting that. And I think that they need to, as I say, I'll get all the generations together. You say, and you are, Lou, a connector. I say I'm a uniter. Okay. I am trying to get all the generations, all people of all kinds of differences together. I came up with about a month ago a word that's not so easy to say, collaboragism. And what that means is getting, I have lots of made up words. Gengagement is one of them, and kaleidoscope to kaleidoscope. And the first kaleidoscope is COLLIDESCOPE, as in, heading for conflict. But to say, look, you have a problem, and instead of competing with each other, find out how you can work best or solve your problems together. It could be the environment. It could be whatever. It doesn't have to be only work focused. So I think that's really important. And I also think that it's very important for management to see this book, because they have to be behind setting time aside, giving the professional development and the programs and the things that can be done, whether it's volunteering together or whatever, that is going to help this and get us beyond the anxieties that we have some control over, which is not a lot of external things, and the treacherous, divisive times that we're in.
This is excellent stuff. Phyllis Weiss Haserot, if you could, share with all the Thrive Loud fans all the places that they could find your book, websites, places so they can learn more about you. We'll put it in all the show notes, but it comes better when they hear it from you as well.
All right. The book you can get on Amazon and your favorite bookstores, whatever they are, brick and mortar or the online ones. And the publishers always like to hear that you're pushing and the booksellers are, that you're pushing all the stores. My newest website is www.youcantgoogleit.com. You can also get there by crossgenerationalconversation.com. And then I have a huge website that started years ago and still gets some more content on it, which is pdcouncil.com. The name of my firm is Practice Development Council, COUNSEL. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me easily putting in my name. Twitter is at Phyllis W. Haserot. That's HAS as in Sierra, EROT. So what else?
I think you covered the gamut. You hit it all.
I feel like I haven't, but that's all right. Try. And please contact me. I love to have conversations, cross-generational or my generation, although I consider myself cross-generational because I identify strongly with 3 generations. But I love to hear questions. I have lots of free stuff. And I would, I always like to get to know more new people.
I just checked this out for the Thrive Loud listeners. While the book is called You Can't Google It, you can Google You Can't Google It, and you will find all of Phyllis's information.
Of course.
So Phyllis, the last question, which you were really concerned about, you said it was the hardest one. Phyllis, can you share with the Thrive Loud fans your all-time favorite movie?
I don't know what that is, as I told you, but the things that when I'm asked to give a quick answer, I usually say Funny Face, but I'm going to give another one as well. So for those of you who don't know what Funny Face is, it's a musical with Gershwin music. It stars Audrey Hepburn, who I love, and Fred Astaire. And it's just lovely, and I'm big on musicals, and I'm in fact on the board of a not-for-profit or arts organization that helps develop new musicals.
Perfect.
And the second one, which I do want to mention because I thought about that afterwards, is 1776, which is another musical. I watch it every year around Independence Day, around the 4th of July, because it's always on. And every time I learn some more about history. It's fun and but things about slavery and the North and the South and how they were fighting and the arguments. I learn something every year.
Phyllis Weiss Haserot, truly a pleasure to have you on Thrive Loud. You can't Google it, but you're going to bring all the generations together and have conversations at work. This was great having you on the show.
I hope you'll help me do that, Lou. I've enjoyed this very, very much. Great conversation.
Right back at you. And to all the Thrive Loud fans out there, thank you for joining us. And until next time, keep thriving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, you lucky person you. As long as you're not a weirdo, make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please, I'm begging you. We're really cool. Also, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Come on, I know you all have those social media platforms and you use them on the daily. If not, find us on the web at thriveloud.com. It was nice thriving with you, and see you next time.